Today, I'm revealing 7 June crops Amish gardeners rely on to turn small plots into high-producing food gardens that harvest all season long. But here's the catch. Plant them wrong, or choose the wrong varieties, and you'll waste space, face weak yields, and lose hundreds of pounds of potential harvest. I learned that lesson the hard way after years of following conventional gardening advice that looked good on paper but produced disappointing results in my own small beds. Then I discovered a completely different approach used by highly efficient growers, including Amish gardeners, who focus on strategic crop selection, tight spacing, and continuous production to harvest astonishing amounts of food from compact spaces. And crop number 7 surprised me the most because it consistently produced more usable food than several of my much larger garden beds combined. So before you plant another seed this June, here's exactly what I'd grow, and why. Long before synthetic fertilizers, automated irrigation systems, and shelves full of expensive gardening products existed, experienced growers, including many Amish gardeners, followed one timeless principle. The garden tells you what it needs if you're willing to slow down and pay attention. Most home gardeners react after something goes wrong: pesticides for insects, fertilizer for yellowing leaves, replanting struggling plants. But growers who harvest remarkable amounts from small spaces operate differently. They observe far more than they correct. Every morning, they notice the little things others overlook: a leaf losing its deep green, a vine slowing growth, aphids forming, soil drying unevenly. These clues appear days or weeks before serious problems develop. That's one reason their June gardens frequently outperform gardens 2 or 3 times the size. By catching issues early, they make small adjustments while the solution is still simple: watering more consistently, adding mulch, removing a few damaged leaves, encouraging beneficial insects, or supporting a vine before it collapses. Those tiny interventions prevent setbacks that could cost weeks of growth and significantly reduce harvests. In a compact garden, this habit becomes even more valuable. When every raised bed, container, or square foot is expected to produce food, losing a single plant isn't just disappointing, it affects the productivity of the entire system. Spotting one issue early can preserve an entire planting and keep your harvest schedule on track. The surprising truth is that the biggest upgrade isn't a gadget or expensive tool. It's discipline. 5 focused minutes each morning reading what your plants are telling you before problems compound. Step 1. Bush beans. While sprawling plants deliver one burst of production, bush beans are compact and hardworking. In a small garden, every square foot has a job, and few crops demonstrate that better. Most gardeners sow one long row of beans, wait patiently, harvest everything at once, and then watch that space sit underused for the rest of the season. It feels productive, but it actually creates long gaps where your garden isn't pulling its weight. Experienced growers use a different strategy. Rather than relying on one planting, they stagger sowings and choose reliable bush varieties that mature in waves, ensuring fresh harvests continue for weeks instead of days. The planting process is simple but important. Sow bush bean seeds about 1 inch deep and space them 3 to 4 inches apart in loose, well-drained soil that receives full sun. June is an excellent planting window once the soil has warmed consistently. Then every 2 to 3 weeks, sow another short section rather than another massive row. This succession planting keeps young plants replacing older ones, creating a nearly continuous supply of tender pods. After sowing, water thoroughly to settle the soil around the seeds and maintain even moisture while they germinate. As the plants mature, continue watering consistently but avoid overcrowding. Good airflow around the foliage helps reduce humidity-related diseases and keeps the plants healthier throughout the season. Now, here's where many gardeners accidentally sabotage their harvests. They either cram too many plants into a tight area, believing more plants mean more food, or they plant every seed on the same day. Both approaches often backfire. Crowded plants compete for sunlight and airflow, while a single planting produces one heavy flush followed by a rapid decline. Proper spacing combined with staggered sowing keeps production steady and the garden working at full capacity. You'll know you're on the right track when sturdy seedlings emerge within a week or two, producing rich green leaves and uniform growth. Soon after, blossoms appear across the planting, followed by clusters of crisp, flavorful pods that are ready to pick repeatedly instead of all at once. So remember the formula. Plant seeds 1 inch deep, space them 3 to 4 inches apart, sow in warm June soil, and repeat every 2 to 3 weeks. That one adjustment transforms a one-time harvest into an ongoing stream of fresh beans and makes far better use of limited space. And once you've mastered that system, you're ready for step 2, where the next June crop climbs upward instead of outward, unlocking even more productivity from the very same garden footprint. Let me share some patterns I've noticed over the years, things I used to do the conventional way that many Amish-inspired gardening systems handle completely differently. No judgment here. I followed these habits for far longer than I'd like to admit, and they quietly limited how much food I could grow in a small space. The first pattern is planting crops in long monoculture rows with large gaps between them. Most of us space everything generously because it looks neat and organized. But those empty areas become wasted real estate that could be producing food all season. The problem is that unused soil receives the same sunlight, water, and attention without contributing much to your harvest. The Amish-inspired approach is to make every square foot earn its place by using intentional spacing, succession planting, and complementary crops, because they understand that productivity, not empty pathways, is the goal. What that means practically is more vegetables harvested from the same raised bed without needing to expand your garden. The second pattern is sowing every seed on a single weekend. Most of us plant the whole packet at once, creating a garden that matures all together and then slows down just as quickly. The problem is that you end up with feast or famine harvests and sections of the garden sitting idle after one crop finishes. The alternative approach staggers June plantings every couple of weeks because continuous sowing creates continuous harvesting. What that means practically is fresh produce for months, instead of one overwhelming harvest followed by empty beds. The third pattern is selecting crops based on size rather than yield. Most of us assume bigger plants automatically produce more food, but sprawling vines often occupy valuable space that could support multiple compact crops. The problem is that canopy size doesn't always translate into harvest efficiency. The Amish-inspired method prioritizes dependable, repeat-producing crops that fit the available space because consistent output matters more than impressive appearance. What that means practically is higher total yields from a limited footprint. The fourth pattern is leaving harvested beds empty while deciding what to grow next. Most of us finish one crop, admire the cleared space for a few days or weeks, and only then start thinking about replanting. The problem is that every unused week during the growing season is lost production that can't be recovered. The alternative is to have the next June crop ready before the previous one finishes, keeping the garden in constant rotation. What that means practically is multiple harvest cycles from the same bed instead of just one. None of these conventional approaches will ruin your garden. They're simply leaving production on the table. Small space gardeners who adopt more intentional planting patterns often discover they don't need a bigger yard to harvest more food. They just need every inch of that yard working smarter. Before I discovered this system, I gardened the way many people do. I filled raised beds with sprawling plants, left generous gaps between rows, and celebrated a single harvest before letting valuable space sit empty. By late summer, I had fresh vegetables on the table, but I was leaving a surprising amount of production untapped. Everything changed when I started treating every square foot like prime real estate. Instead of focusing on growing the biggest plants possible, I focused on producing the most food from the smallest area. By combining fast-growing June crops, vertical supports, and succession planting, my garden transformed from a one-time event into a continuous source of harvests. The progression was easy to see. Week 1-2, Seeds germinated quickly, transplants settled in, and vibrant new growth covered areas that once would have remained bare. The beds looked healthier and more organized from the start. By the end of the first month, early vegetables were thriving, replacement crops were already in the ground, and I began harvesting quick-maturing greens and other fast producers. Instead of waiting months for results, the garden was already giving back. Around month 3, the real power of the system became obvious. Multiple crops were producing at the same time, harvested spaces had been replanted, and vertical growers filled unused airspace above the beds. The garden appeared fuller, but more importantly, it was far more productive. By the end of the season, I had harvested significantly more food from the exact same footprint than in previous years. The increase didn't come from expanding the garden. It came from using the available space and time more efficiently. Imagine a 10-square-foot raised bed that produces one crop and then sits half-empty for weeks. Those idle days represent lost harvest opportunities. Now imagine that same bed planted with compact June crops, vines trained upward, and new seedlings replacing harvested plants immediately. Instead of producing once, the bed keeps working for you all season long. One of the biggest mindset shifts was realizing that success isn't measured by the size of an individual tomato plant or squash vine. It's measured by the total pounds of food harvested from a fixed area over an entire growing season. The gardeners who inspired this philosophy stayed disciplined about keeping every section of the garden in active production. And over time, those small decisions add up to remarkable harvests. Keep your expectations realistic in the first year. You may not triple your harvest overnight, but by eliminating wasted space, choosing productive June crops, and replanting consistently, you'll almost certainly gather more food than before. Refine the process each season, and those improvements can compound into impressive long-term results. If you want more deep dives into how traditional gardening communities maximize harvests, practical small-space growing systems, and time-tested strategies that produce more food with less space, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Here on Garden Workshop, I share new videos every week designed to help you build a more productive garden, no matter how small it is. Now here's what I want to know from you. In the comments below, tell me which of these June crops you're planning to grow this season, or what's the biggest challenge preventing your small garden from reaching its full potential. Have you tried succession planting before? Which crop has surprised you with its productivity? I read every single comment, and many of my future videos are inspired by your experiences and questions. And if this video changed the way you think about getting bigger harvests from a tiny space, or gave you one idea you can put into practice this week, please share it with someone who's always wanted to grow more food but believes they need a bigger garden to do it. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with me. Until next time, keep growing smarter, keep every square foot working for you, and I'll see you in the next Garden Workshop video.